James LAC here, back with another breakdown video today. Daniel Dubois, hopefully I said that right. Not sure if I did, but regardless, he fights, I think it's this weekend, against Anthony Joshua. Just actually saw the live workout live come up, so I thought I'd find some footage of his strength conditioning and we can break it down. Give you good, bad, ugly, just maybe what he's trying to achieve out of it. Again, this is just a compilation of footage, I think, from his social media and things, so we're not going to be able to get kind of like a whole build up and I guess where this fits, but we're going to just take it at face value essentially and then just kind of talk through what he's doing, potentially why he's doing it, etc. So he's just doing a backward sled drag before. And it looks like we're into like a one arm row in that kind of plank position. So he's probably just doing this part of some kind of conditioning circuit of some sort. Oh yeah, nothing wrong with what he's doing there. So we'll just continue on. Then we have the landmine punch throw, which is, I guess, a favorite in all MMA and striking martial arts. Funnily enough, if you go to the Sweet Science of Fighting podcast, Rebecca Summers, who's one of the strength and conditioning coaches at the UFC PI, they've stopped using this exercise and the test. They've found that the jammer punch throw is a better option because it's more horizontal versus this kind of vertical. This is really heavy as well. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the exercise. I think the application or maybe the reasons why people are doing it is not quite there. And for example, this really heavy load kind of doesn't really make sense in this instance. So if we talk about like throwing a punch, it's about having that relaxation when you're throwing. So if you're trying to throw something heavy, you're tense throughout that movement. Again, then you've got the argument of specificity. Does it really matter if it doesn't match what's happening exactly? Yeah, there's points on both sides of it. I will say, like a lightly loaded landmine punch throw, I don't think is going to be end of the world. I think you potentially have better options, just like throwing a medicine ball as an example, and just various other strength training exercises. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's an issue, and I don't think it's the panacea of improving punch performance. So you're not going to punch harder just because you're doing landmine punches. Weighted dips, good options as always. I will say though, just be careful if you do have sternum problems. Like for example, I can't do dips at all. I haven't been able to do dips, I don't think, ever. If I do dips, my sternum just completely, whatever happens to it, where it hurts to sneeze. And I can't even do any other pressing movements. It's like 6 months I'm out from doing that stuff. So just bear that in mind if you are doing dips. If you can do dips, perfectly fine. Then we have Atlas Stone loading. I love Strongman training, but the application in boxing, I don't think is necessary and potentially risking, I guess, a higher risk of injury. So if we're talking like in the sport of Strongman, the two events that are the highest injury risk are Atlas Stone loading and tire flips. And if you watch my last video on Jiu-Jitsu Strongman exercises, I explain why I don't like the tire flip and don't ever program it. I mean, you need to have equipment firstly, but there's a reason I don't program it. One of those reasons is that the biceps are in a very precarious position when you're trying to lift a tire. Atlas Stones are the same. So Atlas Stones have a very high risk of biceps injury. So bear that in mind. Also, I don't think it's just not as applicable in boxing as it is to something like grappling arts. Like if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete and you're doing stone loading, hell yeah. You can do it with sandbags, whatever else, but just for boxing, it doesn't really make too much sense. What do we got next? Like a really steep decline setup. All good. Nothing wrong with that. It's typical ab exercise for boxers. Then also we have like an elevated plyometric or explosive push-up. Cool, nothing wrong with that either. So you can kind of vary how you do these as well. So you can do like, if you do it off high like this, obviously it's a lot slower. You can do like one plate and try and be faster off the floor. There's different ways you can do things. So we have like a touch and go deadlift. Yeah. I've talked a lot about how I prefer deadlift variations and using the squat as the main lower body movement. And then for the hip hinge, I'd rather use something like a Romanian deadlift because it is a pure hinge movement, whereas the deadlift is kind of like that in between squat and hinge. So I'd rather have a squat pattern and then a true hip hinge pattern separately than have deadlifts. So also we have, it's funny because in all these videos of breakdowns I've done, I swear almost every fighter, they just have to combine multiple exercises into one. I don't know why it is a thing in combat sports, but it's like if you're just doing one exercise targeting one thing, it's not enough. We have to add more to it. Now, in this one in particular, one issue is you see how he's rowing that dumbbell? He rows it to his chest, and then you can see it's all upper trap with his row. So you can see it doesn't even get the stretch, and then it's all upper trap. So typically when we're doing rows, especially for strikers who often have like rounded thoracics, really, I guess, active upper trap area and don't get much stuff done to that lower trap, mid trap, and some of that lower lat area. You want your rows to kind of focus on there because you don't get much there. So pulling the hand towards the hip and then letting that kind of shoulder blade come back and down, and then at the bottom, letting it stretch over the shoulder, if that makes sense. That way you're getting the shoulder blade to move with the shoulder, so you're essentially developing good shoulder function and shoulder health, but then you're also targeting kind of that lower mid trap, lower trap, and that lower lat area. Just better for overall health and posture in this rather than this. And then the neck obviously puts more strain on the traps there as well, making it a really upper trap bias row, which, I mean, just times you might want to do that, but typically it's not something you'd want to do. Oh, I like this. There you go. So step up jump, I've actually used this with a fair few athletes before. It's a solid exercise, this one. So you can just jump off. It's like a nice single leg jump. Jump as high as you can. There's not much else to say to it, to be honest. Other thing is just try and be max. If you're going for max speed and power, it's got to be max intent with every jump. What else we got? Ski erg. Okay. Not much to say there. Oh, we got some lifting. Okay. What's it? Oh, it's just pressing. Some half presses. So I will say again, for just general shoulder health, lock it out at the top and get all the way through. Get your head through under the bar, ears in line with your biceps to finish, versus just kind of pumping these half reps. Oh, is he doing a complex? What's he doing now? Press then squats. Okay, is there more to it or just that? Interesting. I'm not sure when and why he's doing this in a training cycle. It's an interesting, it doesn't really make much sense, right? I mean, complexes are awesome for general work capacity. You can do them early in a training block. Typically you're doing more exercises than that in a complex. So for example, you might do like deadlift or Romanian deadlift, and then you might do hang power clean, and you might do some front squats, and you might do push press, and you might do back squats, etc. And you're kind of getting a work capacity effect out of it. This one is kind of just two exercises put together. Not sure. Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure why. That's pretty much it. So some crawling on the treadmill. I think the treadmill might be turned off on this one. So it's kind of like a makeshift sled. This is a good use of a treadmill. I've actually done a video of a while ago now of using dead mill sprints, so sprinting on and off treadmill. Yeah, this is solid. If you're looking for something different in your conditioning, you can definitely do something like this. There we go, sandbag training. So this would be probably specific more to the tie-up, so boxing tie-up. So if you actually, wrestling concepts work well in boxing. If you actually check out Jeffrey Chu, I had on the podcast, if you check out his Instagram, he's actually got some various drills he does with boxers, just wrestling based moves. Can definitely help with work capacity, especially if someone's just tying you up all the time. And stuff like this can actually be pretty helpful. I actually quite like this. Okay, what else we got? Air bike. Again, it's like just moderate intensity. There's the tire flip. We talked about this earlier. So you see how his hands are underneath like this? This is where you get the... So when you're doing a tire flip, a proper tire flip technique, your hands don't go under the tire. They go around the tire like this. So you're never cupping underneath. Whereas obviously anyone who's not a strongman athlete will do the tire flip like this. And that's where you get in trouble when you have a heavy tire. When you're pulling it with your arms and your biceps, run into problems. Strongmen aren't picking it up with their arms. They get into a position where they're driving into the tire. So think of it like if you had a harness on and a heavy sled behind you and you were marching forward, that's the position that strongmen use to get the tire to come up before getting underneath it. Most people don't know that. It's a completely different technique to how people actually flip the tire like that, because usually it's too heavy to even do that. Okay, so just flipping a tire back and forth. Interesting way of doing conditioning for boxing, to be honest. I think if you want a high intensity stimulus, follow Andrew Usher's sprint interval training research. We talked about it a lot on videos, and we've talked about it a lot on the podcast as well. Another condition. So he's doing like a heavy dead ball push throw and then over the box. So this would just be a very general like conditioning modality. Like you're kind of just adding work to do work in this instance. And you could do something like this for some variation, but I wouldn't make this like your main conditioning elements in your training. You should be trying to target some kind of specific adaptation with your conditioning, and whether that's targeting some kind of central adaptation or peripheral adaptation. Obviously they're not isolated, but through your different conditioning protocols, depending on where you are in your training cycle, is probably better than kind of just picking something random like this and then just going for time or whatever it is. Now you could class this as maybe some kind of work capacity effect to it, but again, a very, very general mode of doing it. We're into some medicine ball throws. So this is what I would say this, I think, has better application than the landmine throw. And I will say lighter medicine balls. Just talking with Seth Linetsky, I'm going to bring him back on the podcast soon, actually. If you don't know who Seth is, he's probably pioneered a lot of the punch research that's been going on currently. Really pioneered the idea of effective mass for punching, I guess, impact force. And I remember talking to him many years ago about medicine ball throws, and he mentioned about using really light medicine balls for the punch throws. So I've always stuck with that. I think it's a good rule of thumb to use. And then if you're doing things like scoop tosses, you can definitely go heavier. So I like this. Then we've got pull-ups. Those are nicely done pull-ups. If you're going to do pull-ups, copy Mr. Dubois here. All right. Pike push-up. This is a nice substitute for overhead pressing, a nice variation on a push-up. Targets the shoulders more than the chest. Solid option as well. That's a good bodyweight one if you're looking to add some more bodyweight exercises to your routine. Almost like if you're into that kind of calisthenic stuff, or just adding some variation. Sledgehammer, tire, smash. This is a solid option, even just for training your grip. So you can definitely do something like that. More dips. That's all good. We'll skip through this. Pull-ups, monkey bars. These are all good options too. More gymnastics. I like it. It's just quite a bit of gymnastics in his training, it seems, just from the various clips we've seen through this. If you have that option, definitely worth doing. And I think even worth just learning, just for general movement, body awareness, shoulder and arm strength, all that kind of stuff. So nothing wrong with any of that. More weighted pull-ups. I like it. And then finishing with weighted push-ups on his knuckles. So if you don't have a bench press, or maybe bench presses mess with your shoulder, like just a straight bar can sometimes do that. I know it does for me sometimes, especially if you've got a high load of boxing. You can use the weighted push-up instead. So you can replace the barbell bench press with something like this. There's no rule that says you have to bench press. When I was preparing an international rugby team for European championships, we had a team of like 40 guys, so 20 guys at once training. We had 45 minutes to an hour in the gym. We had 2 barbells and 1 rack and a few other bits and pieces. So doing anything like a barbell bench press wasn't possible when you've got 20 guys you have to get through. So I replaced all their main pressing movements with weighted push-ups. Works well. You can do that, especially if you have a partner that can load more plates on you. You can do them relatively heavy. If you don't have plates, you can use a band. So there's many options you can do. And it can just be a little easier on your shoulder, and it can be your main movement. So just bear that in mind, that you don't have to be stuck with the barbell. You can load the stuff pretty heavy as well. You can make it harder by elevating your legs. There's lots of things you can do there. So bear that in mind. You don't have to be stuck to the barbell. But hopefully you enjoyed this breakdown of just a bit of his training. If there's someone you want me to break down or anything, let me know down in the comments, as well as check the first link in the description as well, because that has the free MMA and Jiu-Jitsu strength and conditioning blueprints. And I'll see you in the next video.